Hello, everyone. Welcome to Backlot Banter, the show where we talk about movies. This week, we're doing a little ramp up to a little movie you might have heard about. It's called The Snyder Cut of Justice League. It's coming on HBO. We'll
Yeah.
get around to it. But this week, we're doing a bit of a ramp up to The Snyder Cut. We're looking back in the illustrious film history of one Mr. Zachary Snyder. And we're going back to the dawn of the DCEU, as some like to say. We're going back to 2013's
A dawn
Man
of
of
justice,
Steel.
you
A
would.
Dawn of Justice. No, that's next week. That's next week.
Next
That's
week.
right.
Can't fucking wait.
Yes, that's right. We're doing Man of Steel, we're doing BVS, and we're doing Justice League, all in lead
BVS
up to
extended. cut.
BVS Ultimate Cut. Yes.
Yes, you
Well,
must
I
do
don't
that
know-
one.
I don't know the terminology.
All in lead up to Zack Snyder's The Justice League on March
Yes.
18th. So tune in every week. We're starting off this week with Man of Steel.
Or else.
So Tucker, I know. Let's go around. How long has it been since we've all seen Man of Steel? I caught it on TV a number of years ago, which is my first time seeing it.
I might have seen it in theaters. I've seen the movie, but
Okay.
it's easily been since 2013 or 14.
Okay.
So
basically
I
haven't
don't.
seen the movie.
I remember distinctly the last time. I think I was in high school when I saw it last. It's been a couple years, but this was my, I believe, fourth viewing of Man of Steel.
Okay.
Mhm.
And just so we put it out there for the audience members who might not have seen our content before, Abram is one Zack Snyder loving fellow, and
Yes,
Tucker and
I
I
am.
are reticent on the matter to be polite. To be polite.
So we were in a Discord voice channel, the three of us and another member of our Discord. Join our Discord, link in the description as usual. And they asked us what we thought of Man of Steel because they knew we were going to review it. And we were like, no, we're not going to share a lot of our thoughts, but we'll each give 4 words.
Mhm.
And my 4 words were, I really liked it. And Tucker said, a Tanner,
same
I
thing.
fucking told
I
you.
said worse than I remember.
Yes, and then
Oh
Tanner
shit! I need to
said,
come up with a. I didn't say one. Should I come up with?
Yeah.
all you said
What
was
was
that
it?
you expected me to like it, which makes me feel like we're probably at odds with each
Yeah.
other moving into this discussion.
I just 5 minutes into the movie, I'm like, Abram's gonna like this.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
so let's get to the movie in question. Man of Steel 2013. Here we go. We open, ladies and gentlemen, in a just an inspired iteration of the planet Krypton. We get Russell Crowe, and we get some other people. I'm not really sure of their names. Also, Michael Shannon's there.
yes.
Yeah.
Tucker, what do you think of that design of Krypton? Because I know you had something to say about it last night.
Oh, I'm just confused about the geography, man. It's like, why is everything made of like cardboard slats? Like everything in the background is these layers, and it's like, how do they? Where do they go to the bathroom? It's like, I was just confused about it. I don't think it was necessarily good or bad. It was certainly otherworldly, which is the intention, but it wasn't very visually engaging, and it didn't really make you feel like, oh no, this magical world is crumbling, because it was just kind of like a bunch of stuff going on in the background. It wasn't really anything particularly unique.
Sure. Abram?
So, okay. So, like I said, I really like Man of Steel. I think that the 2 weakest elements of the film are the opening on Krypton
Mhm.
and the visual clusterfuck of Zod fighting Superman at the end of the
Sure.
film.
Yeah.
It's bookended by the 2 weakest sequences. And so, in terms of the Krypton part, it's fine. I like some of the ideas of the Krypton technology.
Sure.
Like the fucking
The weird pin
like,
art stuff.
yeah, the pin art stuff that makes faces and everything. There's a lot of cool ideas there. I like the big bird that Jor-El.
Haraka. The
Yeah, so-
Haraka.
Yeah, the Jor-El flies around on. So there's a lot of interesting ideas, but it just, if you don't read DC Comics, it feels very rushed. It feels just kind of strange.
Well, I
in
was going
addition-
to ask,
yeah.
what is that version of Krypton? Is that found anywhere in any comics
Is it? Yeah. Is
before
it
this movie
based on
come out,
actual comics
or
book?
was did this spring from the mind of Zack Snyder?
So I have not read a ton of Superman comics.
Okay.
Mhm.
Because I'm not a huge Superman fan in general, outside of this depiction and some key comics, which are pretty different, such as Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, Superman for All Seasons. Great
Good,
shout
yeah.
for anyone in the audience if they haven't read it.
Great story. Love that one.
Yes. So I honestly don't know, but I don't believe that Krypton is usually depicted this way. I think this was Zack Snyder's sort of brooding, like 2-color CGI attempt at Krypton, which
Yeah.
you know
I
doesn't
listen,
really work.
I think it doesn't. It's silly. It's kind of all over the place, but at least it's something. It's inspired. It's not. It's You can argue it's a bit generic. It's a far future sort of alien planet, future technology, but it's not like they're all in white robes and it's crystals. He didn't rip off like the
Right.
Christopher Reeve Supermans, which I appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that he did keep constant though that I appreciated was like the leading council of the planet, who's just a bunch of idiots in flowing robes and like, what are you talking about? The planet is not exploding. Stop. We're fancy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That actually, not to butt in, but that speaks to probably my biggest issue with the Krypton. Well, yeah, I mean, to butt in, but to pretend to be polite about it. I just think that the problem with the Krypton sequence is that it doesn't have that kind of, it doesn't really foreground the issues of Krypton. Hey, the planet's gonna fucking blow up, and it just kind of happens.
I know that happens because I
Right.
know the story of Superman, but the movie does not make that particularly clear.
Yeah.
It just sort of they're like standing around like, yeah, and then shit just starts crumbling, and you're like, oh well, all right.
The planet like implodes, it crumbles around the around
now
the
here's
equator.
the thing: the explosion of the planet shot from space, I thought was awesome.
Yeah,
it was really cool. I mean, that was just violent and like crumbles in, the cracks are spreading. I'm like, okay, that's pretty awesome.
Speaking of things that we really liked from the opening, like 5 to 10 minutes, 10, 15, I don't really know. I lost track of time in this movie.
Sure.
Things that we liked. Michael Shannon. I love Michael Shannon as Zod. He's just, he's crazy. He's insane. He's intimidating. I love him. He's just heresy. And then he's yelling things about Jor-El having a natural birth. And he's yelling about bloodlines. He's basically a space Nazi, which makes him a great villain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he remains, I think, that the entire runtime of the film, one of the most charismatic people in there. I'm a big Henry Cavill Superman fan, as I'm sure we're going to get into, but I really think that Michael Shannon as Zod presents a great villain because he really believes it. He can really get into the sort of melodrama that Zack Snyder directs in a really interesting way. So I consistently find him engaging.
I'm gonna put on a limb.
Okay.
Outside of maybe Pedro Pascal, I think he's the best villain. Of the DCU. Although Ewan McGregor, Black Mask, also very good.
Ewan McGregor, Black Mask is great. I will revisit what you just said when we watch BVS as I make the case for Jesse Eisenberg.
Oh, sure.
Lex.
Yeah.
You're going to make the case for Jesse Eisenberg.
Yes.
Well, I'm eager to see that. I'm eager to see that case being made.
He's got a case, yeah.
I mean, I've seen that film 6 times, so I can back it up. This will be something for next week.
You're underwhelming me.
Speaking of Henry Cavill Superman, let's talk about Henry Cavill, because I think directly after this is when we get a cut to basically adult Superman. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's on.
I love him.
He's not really cognizant of too much in those first few scenes. But I think they're a good way to introduce you to this character who's not necessarily the Superman that we're familiar with. He's kind of he's an adult, but he's kind of lost. He's not confident in his powers yet, but he has this moment of heroicism of basically finishing Deepwater Horizon.
Yeah, he's fixing Deepwater Horizon.
Yes.
In which his strength maybe hasn't fully developed yet or something, because the Superman in my mind could lift that thing, but it falls
I'm gonna say it's already structurally unsound, and that's why it like collapses.
But he could still push it up. He's Superman.
No, but the top is still falling over. It's not important. This movie is rife with plot holes and like contrivances and things. So if we analyze every single one, this is gonna be way too long.
Yeah, but I thought that was a good moment.
Yeah,
for him coming to terms with his heroism, because it was so in the moment. Like he's like, oh shit. That's literally going down. If I don't do anything, like that whole group of people is going to die. So I like that. Speaking
in broad, painting with a broad stroke here about Henry Cavill Superman, I like him. Like you said, it's a bit melodramatic, like Abram pointed it out. That's what he's dealing with. He's not so much the hope, truth, and justice Superman that we get from the comics, the classic Superman, Christopher Reeve, stuff like that. But he's a little bit darker, but he still has the sort of core Superman elements. And I think Henry Cavill is where you can really pin that on. Yeah. He also has the physical presence. I'm not going to thirst over Henry Cavill too much, but when he comes up and he's
unlike that female soldier at the end.
Yes.
Yeah. When he comes up and he's taking the clothes off the clothesline after the Deepwater Horizon incident, he's just just barrel-chested, hulking arms, just hairy chest. I turned to Tucker and I said, "Look at that! That is a specimen of a man right there. An absolute a golden god, Adonis among our men."
Henry Cavill
Superman,
really
if you will.
a Superman. He really is, I think, the perfect casting for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
He has the insane physical build for Superman,
Yeah.
but he also has a subtle charisma about him that I really like, that comes through really strongly out of small moments, like when he cauterizes Lois Lane's wound.
I agree. I was just about to mention that.
There are just so many small moments where Henry Cavill really shows himself to be somebody who can. What I love about the Superman on the whole is that it adds a little bit more nuance to his character, adds a little bit more of a realistic slant to people kind of fucking with him and him having to grow up in all of that. So the Superman's a little bit more jaded, but he still has that likability about him. And Henry Cavill, I think, just pulls it off very well.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a big fan of Henry Cavill Superman. I always have been, and I do think that this version of the character is very interesting. Not exactly comic accurate, but I think it presents an engaging film character version of the character. I think that he doesn't necessarily play my favorite when he's like it's younger flashbacks of Henry Cavill.
Yeah,
I'd
like to talk about those flashbacks.
But I think he's a very solid adult Superman. I think when they try to force him to be a little bit younger and being a little more edgy and stuff, it's like, okay, well, I think you probably could have cast someone who looks similar. Like, I didn't think it needed to be him aged down. But on the whole, I do think that great casting. I think he did a good job in the role. And it is those subtle charisma moments where I'm like, okay, he still is a Superman. Like he has those moments. He has that trusting look in his eyes that allow people to be like, okay, even though this is such a wacky, crazy moment, or not like over the top, dramatic moment, I can trust this man with my life, and a lot of people do.
Yeah, I think Henry Cavill really pulls that off, but I'd like to talk about the flashbacks because I like that method. On face value, I like that method of telling Superman's origin. We don't spend too much time. We cut back to it occasionally. We hit the highlights of, the classic moments. I really like him, first experiencing his X-ray vision and super senses. It gives it a sort of a more serious, horrifying feel that Zack Snyder might want to go for with the tone of this movie. But there's also a thing that I wanted to point out. Thinking about this. Are the flashbacks out of order?
Yeah,
because here's thematically, because there's moments where so Clark Kent he's getting picked on by the trucker in the bar or whatever. He refuses to stand up to him on principle, even though he could and probably should. But
fucks his truck.
Well, he fucks his truck over. That's pretty cool.
Awesome shot. I love that shot.
But here's the thing. The flashback of him dealing with bullies comes half an hour after that scene. And it happens with a few other things as well.
Good point.
Him experiencing his senses and things like that. That's just the example that jumped out to me. But I think it's not a big deal, but it just stuck out to me as a little strange. But overall, I do really like those flashback sequences.
The flashback sequences for me give Clark the sort of depth that I think the character needs. This sort of tension of him growing up, being a Kryptonian and not knowing it, and having to deal with these powers and wanting to help people, and having this sort of Southern boy sensibility that has to be juxtaposed with these sort of cultural values being instilled on him by his father, being like, don't use your powers, trying to protect Clark. There's a lot of really interesting material there that for me adds a lot to his character that I don't get often. So I really like the flashbacks. I even like the one where I'll be honest, I get a little bit of a chill when Dad puts up the hand, don't come save me.
I want to talk about Jonathan.
We're going to talk about that in a sec, but I need to put my opinion out on this, because I actually think my favorite part of the movie is that opening segment, or the opening act, really, of intercutting with all the flashbacks, him being super powered, but not quite Superman yet. He hasn't found out as a Kryptonian. He's dealing with different situations. I think a lot of those scenes, while they are kind of all over the place, I think they paint a compelling picture of the character's life. And as Abram was saying, it gives him a human side. It gives him a nuance that the rest of the movie doesn't really allow. Him as an adult, as Superman, dealing with the world ending in Zod attack, all that. There's not really any chances for him to get development like that. So having those flashbacks, I think, is a great way to set the character, even though it doesn't necessarily pan out as a full arc over the course of the movie. It definitely does give him more nuance, and I really did appreciate that. And it's probably why it's my favorite section of the movie.
Sure.
So let's talk about Jonathan Kent and the tornado.
Jonathan Kent.
Jonathan Kent and the tornado is a tale that has that's plagued me
Tale
since
time.
Tale as Old as Time. That's plagued me since I watched this movie again last night.
By the way,
First of all,
that's Tanner for plagued.
Plagued. Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, good to know.
Yeah.
I just want to translate.
First of all, growing up in the good old Midwest, don't go under an overpass during a tornado. It is literally the one place you don't want to go when you're on the road during a tornado. It will create a wind tunnel that will suck you out from under it faster than Jonathan Kent can tell a story about some dead horses in a river.
We'll get to that next film.
We'll get to that in the next week. But Jonathan Kent is what are you gonna say, Tucker?
I just say that was a weird scene. I thought the emotional impact of it was weird, or was interesting, because I liked him being like, no, don't out yourself in front of all these people. I'm your father. I need to sacrifice myself in this moment, and putting the hand up and everything. But I think everything around that kind of pushed it too hard to be like, this is an emotional moment. Hey, he's like, okay, the dog is way over there, but we're standing here. You guys go there. I'll go over there and get the dog, even though that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Even though I'm a human man, I'm a human man who is slower than you, can get my foot stuck in a door or whatever.
But there's just so many layers to that scene that I think they're like, yeah, we're building it up to be an emotional moment. It's gonna be emotional, I swear. And then as fucking pickup trucks and hunks of land are being swirled around the background, he's just standing there. His hair might be ruffling a little bit, but he's just chilling. And then dust goes in front of him, and instead of being like sucked up into the fucking air and blown to smithereens like he should be, it's clearly a filmic emotional moment. But yeah, I actually have a core point that I kind of want to put out here. You guys can put your thoughts on that sequence. But I think the weirdest part of this movie to me, and why I think I'm so conflicted of it all overall, is it toes a very strange line between realism and presenting these characters in a realistic setting with realistic emotional reactions to things, and then moments that are clearly not grounded in reality like that are clearly intended to be filmic, emotional moments that are designed to push emotion rather than realism. And it's a weird balance between reality and like suspension of disbelief. It's like, okay, well, when am I supposed to like be okay with it breaking reality, or when should I like focus on it being so grounded, because it is so grounded in so many sequences. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's my thesis on this movie, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. The Jonathan Kent for me in this film is a very polarizing in the way that he gives advice to Superman, because it's very unclear if he's giving advice to show your powers to people, take the responsibility of being this superpowered being, or he's like, no, people will freak out, they're going to be terrified of you, hide your abilities for the rest of your life. And there's sort of this juxtaposition that they could do, where Jor-El, his biological father, could be like this man of action. He's doing space kung fu he's a scientist, he's blasting him off into space. He's doing space kung fu. And then Jonathan Kent, who's like, no, be more measured. People are going to have adverse reactions to this. So he's sort of like dragging him down so Superman doesn't become like maybe the Nightmare-verse Superman that we see.
Sure.
But I think it just happens too much with Jonathan Kent. He's sending very mixed signals, and we're just blessed that Superman didn't come out like that kid from Brightburn with Jonathan Kent's advice.
You know what? Kind of true.
So I really like the Jonathan Kent sequence. And the reason I do is because the big complaint about Superman is that he's got no limitations. He's got nothing going on, right? He's unstoppable. That is a sequence where you see somebody holding a real sense of power over Superman. And I really like that. I like this idea that his father is, for most of his young adult life, basically telling him how to use his powers. And for me, the tension is between Clark wanting to help people pretty overtly and not understanding his identity, and his dad having this very, I think, understandable parental jadedness about wanting to protect his son.
Okay.
And so holding up the hand saying, no, let me die, sacrificing myself for him, I think that does a lot to galvanize Clark's character moving forward.
Hmm.
I think it does a lot to sort of challenge the idea that Superman is basically above any sort of rule, any sort of, thematic rule. There's nothing that can really be done to him. I think it's a great way to show Superman's development. I think it's a great way to show him actually being impacted by something and have this sort of baggage behind him that informs a lot of his ridiculous, selfless acts moving forward.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the thing that I want to say before and we can close out this point if we want to. But in most Superman stories, Jonathan Kent dies from a heart attack, which Superman cannot solve. Like even
Yeah.
with all of his crazy abilities, he's the most powerful being on the planet. He can't save everyone. And I think that story beat, although it's cliched in Superman stories, works a lot better for that you can't save everyone motif that Superman is part of Superman's character, and that's important for him to be, galvanized into the Superman that we know and love, like you said. I think the heart attack story point works a lot better than like letting his dad telling him to let him die in a situation where Superman could have saved him. In all reality, could have saved him, probably without most people knowing. So I just think that it was definitely a change that they wanted to make. I just
Yeah.
don't think it worked.
I mean, I think it might speak more to the fact that it's a plot point that should have been unpacked more later.
Yeah, sure.
This sort of feeling of, oh shit, in hindsight, my identity's out now and it is what it is. And I've got this relationship with Lois and with the American government, and I'm using my powers for good. But in my past, I let my dad it basically sway me into letting him die. And I think that's super interesting, and it needed more space to play and to develop. So it's interesting.
There is one more aspect of Henry Cavill's Superman, or the Superman in this movie overall, that I'd like to address. And it's something that Tucker and I talked about while we were watching the movie, and that is the fact that we don't get a lot. We get the flashbacks, but we don't get a lot of him coming into his own actually as Superman outside the flashbacks. Just straight narrative. We don't get a lot of it. We barely get any, in fact. He basically shows up. Lois Lane comes into this military base. By the way, really like Amy Adams as Lois Lane. Probably the best Lois Lane. She actually does real reporting, which I don't think she's ever done in any like major Superman media beforehand. But she comes into this this alien military base. Superman is there, which I really like. He's just sort of like hanging around in the background. The camera doesn't hang on him too much. Like even the first time, I'm like, was that Henry Cavill, or is that just some random extra with a beard? But he's already there. He heat visions his way in, which we don't see. We just see the tunnel that he makes. Goes into the Kryptonian scout ship, finds his hologram dad, and puts on the Superman suit. And then, like, for him, maybe like 15 minutes later, has his first flight, which is a great scene. Yes. But then he's basically Superman, and we're going into the Zod story. We don't get a lot. I said this with Tucker last night. I would have really appreciated, even if it had added runtime on this movie, if we saw him, stopping some bank robbers, doing some Superman stuff like that, doing maybe like the fixing Deepwater Horizon in the Superman suit now. It just didn't feel right that he just hopped in the suit and then it's the Zod story and he's blowing up Metropolis. It didn't feel right to me. I know it's sort of Zack Snyder's vision, having this be his first day as Superman, but it just didn't sit right with me.
I think what's interesting about this film, for being 2.5 hours long, is that there's not a lot of plot points.
Yeah,
which is curious.
Well, yeah, I think that's actually because this movie is actually 2 acts. It's a first act and then a 1.5 hour, 1 hour 45 minute third act, second act, whatever.
Yeah.
It's the opening segment, the opening act, and then Zod all the way through. And there's like 3 different Zod battles, and they keep going. And I think that's a structure and pacing issue that I really do have an issue with. Like Tanner said, it really does make it feel like we miss some Superman moments.
Mm-hmm.
He, by the way, not a fan of him just getting the suit already colored and ready and I'm a huge
Why
fan
is
of
it
his
different?
mom
Why
making
is
the
it
suit.
different? Why is it different color than all the other Kryptonian suits? Why is
It's
it blue
different
and
colored.
red?
It's not armor. Like it wasn't designed for him. Like there's a lot of weird things there. It's like, oh yeah, well, it's a Superman suit, and him learning to fly and stuff. I think it's all shoehorned. Is like, okay, we have to hit these moments, but they aren't paced out well enough for me to feel like they're impactful. And I think that's because the movie grounds itself so heavily in that third act that it just keeps on and keeps on and keeps on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is for me, it's very subjective, but I know that Superman does that stuff, you know?
Mhm.
And I think at a certain point, telling an origin story
Well,
again
he
is,
doesn't in this movie. In this version of Superman, he doesn't.
yeah, but do we necessarily need to see that? Because we see him doing all of these heroic things before. Him getting the suit is just him putting on a different pair of clothes, essentially, which whether that undervalues the suit or not is a different conversation. But I
Well, I
think
think
that,
it thematically that scene serves as him. He's recognized his own identity finally as a
yeah.
Kryptonian. So that could have added an interesting layer to his super heroics, but that's besides the point.
I mean, I think that if you're talking about thematically him coming to terms with his identity, naturally next should be Zod, because Zod on the whole is a challenge to what Superman knows as being from Earth or being Kryptonian and having the codex inside of his body, essentially.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think the movement from learning who his parents are to coming back home and the great alien invasion sequence on all of the televisions, which I love.
Yeah.
For me, that works. And on the more external to Zod, the more Superman, let's become this hero type of thing, we see him do it before, but Zod really incites him to take his identity to the public, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
I don't get a sense that this is a Superman who would, okay, I've got the suit, and now I'm going to go out and do these braggadocious things with the suit on. He's been raised and informed by by parenting that says he should keep his identity private and that it should be the secret thing. So he's operating in private, right? So you've got that one movement of Clark coming into his own as this sort of undercover vigilante, at the same time that you've got this movement of him discovering his Kryptonian identity. And then those two things come out ahead together because of Zod, because all of a sudden Zod is after him. And Clark has to take his private heroism into the public.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
for me, I think it works through that lens.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I guess it does serve sort of Zack Snyder's vision of his character, that he's not, he's not the hero of Metropolis that everyone knows
He's
and
not your
loves.
daddy Superman.
He's not your
No,
daddy's.
he's
He's not your
not.
grandpappy Superman. He's Zack Snyder Superman, and he's dark and gritty. Speaking of dark and gritty, I want to talk about the Smallville fight scene. I just think it's really great. Superman is saving people. He's actively saving people during the battle. I love how he and the Kryptonians move. It's really the first time that we see a Kryptonian action sequence on Earth, and I think what this film maybe does the best is that it really gives you for the first time, even because before this would really only see in cartoons in the modern day, but it gives you a sense of like how strong these people are. But it
Yeah.
also gives some nuance to that because they can be damaged and knocked out and things like that. But yeah, they're just flipping trucks like they're made of aluminum foil. They're busted through IHOPs and Sears. And I think it has some really great weight when they move real fast to fight each other. I think that looks really cool. And that entire visual style of the action sequences, the physical fight sequences, I think are done very well.
I think it depends on the fight. I love the Smallville fight.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll get to the Metropolis fight in a bit.
Yeah, but that Smallville fight in particular, I think it really is exceptional in the ways that it includes the U.S. military forces and just completely makes them look totally useless. It's such a fun dynamic, and like when Superman's fighting two of Zod's men, and one will grab him and pull him down, the other will hit him. There's just so many great sequences, like his cape getting grabbed and being thrown down into the pavement. It's
Edna Mode, no capes. There's the joke.
Yeah, that's why Edna Mode says no capes.
It's so well choreographed, and even though it's just a CGI clusterfuck, it doesn't feel like it. You know,
no, it feels really it feels more visceral than that.
Here's the thing. I think, and I was very surprised, this movie has great CGI. I think all of the CGI in this movie, while it does get to be a bit much nearing the end, I think it's all done really well. I think it looks good. I think a lot of my issues with the visuals come from the fact that everything has a gray filter over it, and it makes things really samey looking. But I think on the whole, the realism of the CGI and the rippling muscles and the pounding each other and the sound effects, everything going together to make these incredible creatures battle one another, I think it all is very impactful and worked a lot better than I expected. Because I'm used to superhero fights, at least from, this isn't actually that much older of a movie, but it is, this was just after, this was around Thor Dark World and Avengers.
Yeah.
Like this is pretty old in the scheme of superhero movies, at least modern ones. And I think that it still did hold up surprisingly well. And I was very pleased by that.
Sure. Okay, so I really like that Smallville fight sequence. Let's talk about Metropolis. Let's go to the ending point of this film. Let's talk about Metropolis. Boy, it's a big mess. It's a big gray mess. There's world engines shooting fire and smoke, and things are getting smashed on either side of the world. Superman fights a robot squid just briefly. They could throw that in there, and then it all culminates in the neck snap. So, what do you two think about this whole?
Well, actually, I got to start off with one thing. I think that the world engine coming down, landing in Metropolis, and like slamming gravity beams into the ground, that is visceral. That is brutal. Those people get shot up in the air and slammed down. It is a genuine, like, terrifying ground looking up at alien invasion sequence that I thought worked really well. Zod's movement and his the world engine, all that is so visceral and brutal. It makes him a much more impactful villain. And on top of that, I know we're talking about just the last 2/3 of the movie overall now, but I think that Zod's motivation as it evolves, so at the second act, the second, third act, it's hard to say. I think is actually very compelling. It makes him an interesting character. I think it presents an interesting conflict within himself and within Clark's self. But all of that stuff, all the thematic stuff that feeds into why this is happening, I think are all fantastic. And the world engine, really fucking cool.
Yeah.
The line of dialogue on the close-up of Zod in which he says, "Unleash the world engine," from there I'm like, all right. It's fucking time. It's time to turn off the brain. It's time to watch. It's time to watch shit smash into each other.
Yeah.
And for me, that just doesn't compel me in any superhero film ever. As much, it's in a lot of ways the antithesis of the Smallville fight, because if the Smallville fight is controlled and deliberate and choreographed, the Metropolis stuff is just, it's just not. Now it has one of the most excellent payoffs in any comic book continuity thing ever in the beginning of BVS, which we'll get into.
Oh, yeah, that is, yeah, we'll get into that.
But in the context of Man of Steel itself, it just feels loud and unnecessary and hard to follow.
Yeah.
And then
also, why does Superman fight him in Metropolis? They go into space and they come right back down in Metropolis.
Because Superman is from Metropolis and people know Metropolis.
That's true. And more buildings to smash together. It's not fun to see like the Grand Canyon get smashed, but we want to see buildings fall apart.
Yeah. I don't hate the whole, too much destruction thing.
No, I think it's fine.
It's fine, but I just think you can do it in a way that's a little bit more visually readable.
Yeah.
It just becomes gray and Snyder's favorite gray-brown and then a big explosion. And I'm like, I just can't.
Let's talk about Superman killing Zod, okay? Because it's been a cause for quite some criticism of this movie and of Superman in the Snyder-Verse in general. So, Abram, you're the Snyder-Verse aficionado. What do you feel about Superman not only killing Zod, because it's arguably necessary, even though he could have done something else, but then being like heartbroken afterwards? Give me your thoughts.
I feel like I could give 2 to 3 different ways to get out of that fucking corner to not force Superman to have to kill Zod. That is an incredibly contrived thing. How about they're fighting in front of a gas station or something? He's about to use his fucking heat vision onto like a big explosive tank and it's going to blow up a bunch of people or something.
Yeah.
My biggest frustration with the Superman Zod neck snap is that it's completely arbitrary because those dumb fucking parents just had to walk either to their left or
go the other
right.
way.
But in the context of Superman snapping Zod's neck, it's fine. I think it's great. I think, again, if we want to talk about Superman's issue being he's got there's a lack of complexity to his character. There's nothing for him to overcome. Boom, here you go. He's got to kill somebody, right? And I really love him snapping the neck and then just screaming.
Yeah.
I think there's just this sort of guttural power to that sequence. And if you want to accept that Snyder is going to tell these characters in their own way, then I think that in the context of what Zack Snyder's created, it's a really powerful sequence. If only, save for the fact that the family could have just walked away, and that wouldn't have had to happen.
It's a very. I think you're right. It's very contrived writing wise.
I actually don't mind that Superman has to kill Zod. I think that, in all honesty, when you look at all the things that Zod is saying, while he's not sensitive to the human life on the planet, what he's doing is reiterated multiple times for the future of his own people.
Yes.
I think in his own way, Zod is being selfless.
Yeah.
And Clark's conflict with protecting the Earthlings and or the future of the Kryptonians, that's such an interesting conflict that I if I were Clark, I could go either way with it. I could, beat Zod into submission to like make him realize that maybe you could coexist. Maybe there is another way to do it. But I think it's an interesting conflict is what I'm trying to say. However, in the context of that sequence, Zod doesn't really need to die in that scenario. I don't mind that he kills him, but what you're saying with the fact that the reason he kills him is because he's going slowly towards those people. It's like, really, that's the situation you came up with to killing this guy. I think back to, and this was after Man of Steel, but Superior Spider-Man story in which Doc Ock's mind is in Peter Parker's body and he is learning to be Spider-Man, goes into Grand Central Station, and there's a guy who's going to blow himself up with a bomb
vest
in Grand Central Station and kill a bunch of people. So Doc Ock as Spider-Man thinks, okay, the best way to do this is just shoot the guy. He shoots the guy in the head, and that is a huge conflict of, okay, well, yeah, it's Doc Ock, but should Spider-Man kill someone? And that's actually a story point that goes throughout the conflict of that character and his relationship with the Avengers and his relationship with the cops and all of that. And I think that superheroes killing people can be such a powerful moment for their characters, for their appearance to the world, all of that. And I don't mind that Superman killed someone in this movie. I just wish that it had played a little more into his character, because I granted don't remember a ton about my movie Superman. We're going to see it next week. I don't remember if it brings this up at all or in any of the future iterations of that character. Okay, so you're shaking your head. I'll defer to you on this one. That's unfortunate because it takes away the power of this. I think him screaming in the moment, yes, good start to that. But the fact that he doesn't have any recurring trauma about it or references to it or is dealing with that in any other way, I think takes all the power out of the fact that he had to kill someone.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, you could argue that the reason we get such a dark and gritty Superman in BVS is because he had to kill the last remaining member of his race that he knows of, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that is really interesting. Speaking of, just going back to Zod's character a little bit, he's akin to what a lot of people say the best MCU villain is, that is Killmonger, in that he's sort of, even from the beginning, he's sort of justified. He's like, you council idiots, the planet is literally exploding. We need to get our people out of here. And then you're like, yeah, that makes sense. He's right. And he's also like, but we're only going to take the best bloodlines. And you're like, wait, no, Zod, wait, we're fine. Go back. But I think, he's a reasonable person that's just been pushed too far to this very, very bad, to this villainous standpoint. And I think Michael Shannon is great in that. And I sort of fall in the same camp with you guys about Superman killing him at the end. It could have been written better. You could have written a better scenario. I wish Tucker is correct. I wish it would have played maybe a larger character, a larger part in the future of the character. It just didn't. So the initial emotional beat is fine with me, but in the overall view of the Snyder-Verse, it's really a non-starter.
Yeah.
So
sorry, I just want to say quickly that Zod's side friends, his side supporting characters,
Feora and the other two.
Good lord, they're so boring. They're one-note characters that have very little impact. They're just fodder, and it's really weird.
I mean, I do really like Feora and nameless military man, their conflict.
What about
I do like that.
You mean Christopher Maloney, character actor Christopher Maloney? Do they have a rivalry or do they want to have sex? It's very unclear.
I don't know. So we've made it right, basically
we've
through
made
the
it.
film,
Yes,
beat
we've
for
worked our
beat
way
in large
through.
part.
Yeah.
But Tanner, you said that the movie was worse than you remembered it. So sort
Yeah.
of from a higher level, how do you guys feel about Man of Steel?
Listen, I think my thesis statement, Tucker sort of gave his earlier, is that it is clearly, Zack Snyder clearly had a vision for this character. And what's really interesting is that this movie, they didn't plan for this to be a part of a larger series that I'm aware of. Obviously, they were trying to ape some MCU stuff. But to my knowledge, this very much works as a standalone film. You know, there's no setup for the Justice League or anything like that, which they easily could have done. There's some hints. There's a Wayne Tech satellite.
LexCorp stuff.
Yeah, there's some LexCorp stuff, but that could just serve as, you know, fun little Easter eggs. So maybe they thought this was going to be a standalone. Maybe they thought it was going to be part of a franchise. But Zack Snyder clearly had a vision with this movie. He clearly had a trajectory for Clark Kent Superman as a character, and sure, I think it does some questionable things, some not great things with, you know, the pacing and other aspects that we've gotten into. But at least it's something, you know. At least it's not Superman Returns, which is just like, what if we just did Christopher Reeve Superman again? At least it is something. You can lambast it for being dark and gritty, and there's a one thing that we didn't get to, which was Clark Kent literally talking with a pastor about, he's like, I have to sacrifice myself. I have to show myself to save the people of Earth. Well, there's a stained glass window of Jesus over his shoulder. Great subtlety there, Zack Snyder. Love that subtlety. That's subtle. What do we call it here? Subtleism. Thank you.
I like the bit that it's our thing, but we can't remember it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
It's our classic bit that we can't remember. But lambast it for everything that you want. Zack Snyder clearly had a vision. He's a bit more modest in this one with his creative decision, which I appreciate. But it just didn't hold up to the same extent. I watched through it again. I'm like, the pacing didn't work, which I didn't recognize the first time I watched it. There's some questionable things about Superman's characterization that I didn't really catch the first time that I watched it. So in those areas, it is worse than I remember.
Abram, you want to give your overall thoughts?
Or do you want me to go first? I really like this film.
Yeah.
I just for my taste for superhero media, this is what I like. I like the shades of gray being thrown in, not so much visually in terms of color palette,
Sure.
but tonally, narratively, I really like a lot of what Zack Snyder does, right? And I think that the world he created is very interesting, and it gives Superman this sort of dimension that I've always felt the character lacked. And while I like certain Superman comics, like we said, Superman for All Seasons, maybe some other ones here and there, maybe a little All-Star Superman, on the whole, I found the character hard to connect to. But I think this more nuanced and a little bit more messy version of the character speaks to me more. And I think it's just backed up by great performances from Amy Adams as Lois Lane, from Michael Shannon as Zod. I just think that the film moves and it compels me. I didn't feel the runtime. I usually feel the runtime in movies. I watched this with Jean. We started at 10 and finished at like midnight, and I was awake and alert and excited for the whole thing. I feel that it snowballs in terms of its pacing, which is probably to its detriment for some viewers. But for me, I like the way it moves. I like how Zack Snyder says, okay, I've got some, we got to look back a little bit. We got to set up Superman. I'm going to give him this sort of new path into the Cape. And then from there, boom, it's time for Zod.
Yeah.
I think the film works as this sort of just fun superhero action film, but I also think it just presents me with a version of the character in the world that I find interesting.
Yeah, like I said, it's clearly a creative vision that Snyder had. And Tucker, do you want to give your final thoughts since you sort of already gave a thesis statement?
Oh joy, would I love to.
Oh, okay.
I'm being weird. I would
okay.
I would love to.
Okay.
I'm gonna go forward thing as we're going on, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Better than I remembered.
There you go. Okay, good. Good.
I would just switch the word around. But in all honesty, I remember this being basically nothing in my mind. Of course, I saw it a very long time ago, so I put most of that off on that. But I think that this movie is very conflicting in my head because I actually think most of what this movie does is great for me as a fan of superhero stuff, as a fan of superhero movies, of Superman as a character, all of that. I really like the intro. I like the thematic stuff. I like Zod. I like the performances. Unfortunately, I think it's so buried under a mishmash of gray, visually generic superhero action that it gets lost. And my brain started turning off in segments, which was unfortunate because I was so engaged at the beginning. The first third of this and then the thematic points that are trickled throughout the rest of the film, I think are so strong that this movie still is good in my mind. This is a good superhero story. It's a good Superman story. I would have liked to see this character played into more. I would have loved to see him working at the Daily Planet, dealing with that trauma, filling out his relationship with Lois Lane, rebuilding Metropolis. All of this stuff are great ideas that weren't fully realized into the future. And I think it's the fact that it doesn't quite lead anywhere. Of course, it does lead somewhere, but it doesn't lead anywhere for that character in a personal sense that I think is unfortunate. And I think that the fact that the movie does have such large pacing issues in the last 2/3 being one long act and being very samey, I think is a very large detriment, and it knocks it down many pegs. But I think it still has so many of its own good ideas that I still do enjoy it. It's better than I thought. I bumped it up a couple of stars in my rating, and I bumped it up quite a few slots on my DCEU ranking. So I'm coming out of it positive.
Sure. Bonus question. We just got the news today that J.J. Abrams is producing with a person named Ta-Nehisi Coates to write a new Superman movie. It's unclear if Henry Cavill is coming back, but it seems that maybe not, considering they're sort of abandoning the DCEU as we knew it. So
they're not really. They're 25% abandoning it.
What?
I mean, they've still got Wonder Woman sequels and Shazam sequels and Aquaman sequels, like, and a Flash sequel or a Flash movie with the same character, and they're still doing it. They're just not doing crossovers, but maybe they will in the future.
I don't know. It sounds promising. J.J. Abrams made my second favorite Star Wars film and my least favorite Star Wars film, and I don't watch Star Trek movies, so I don't really know on that front, but I'd have to see it. That's the thing. There's so many fucking DCEU rumors and movies happening, then unhappening and rehappening and all of that. I don't know.
Doesn't really matter.
Ta-Nehisi Coates has written some good Black Panther comics.
Okay.
And some other things. Ta-Nehisi Coates is a pretty well-respected just individual beyond this sphere.
Sure.
So I'd be curious.
I'd never heard his name before, so I'm also interested to see where this goes.
Yeah, he does a lot of like social justice and activism stuff and work in that sphere. So I'd be curious to see
what Superman he does.
Yeah, what kind of vision we get. But it's compelling, it's interesting, but it's not Zack Snyder, so why would I even bother?
Well, there you have it, folks. But you know what is Zack Snyder's? Batman versus Superman: The Ultimate Cut, which we will be reviewing in its entirety next week. Abrams' favorite comic book movie of all time.
Yes. In all honesty, very excited for it for multiple reasons. Haven't seen the extended cut. I'm willing to give it a benefit of the doubt until I've seen the larger story. Secondly, I watched this movie and I'm much more positive about it than I initially remembered. Thirdly, it's been a long ass time. Fourth, I occasionally trust Abrams' opinions.
Yeah, occasionally. Take it with a grain of salt, ladies and gentlemen.
By the time I will have finished this viewing, I will have spent over 20 hours watching Batman versus Superman Extended Edition.
We gotta cross that 24-hour line. You gotta.
I'll do my best. I mean, I got still another fucking month until Snyder. It's under a month until Snyder Cut.
Yeah, it is. It is under a month. And we will get to that as well. We will also be reviewing the Snyder Cut in all 4 hours, 1 minute, and 28 seconds. They revealed the exact runtime today.
That's funny.
Fuck yeah, dude.
All in its entirety. And
what happens in those last 28 seconds? Gotta know.
In its infamy or glory, we will be reviewing it and the rest of the Snyder-Verse. So thank you for watching, everyone. We'll see you at BVS next week.